it's one of the worst written things I've ever seen in my entire life.
You got people in charge that have either lost connection with their audience, or you've brought people externally that don't get it. The best toy lines of all time.
The Shadowe Crew Podcast.
It's a guy in Utah that has a ranch, and they've got like hidden Aztec treasure under there and supernatural shit going on at the same time.
What the hell? Blind Frog Ranch?
Yep, Blind Frog Ranch. Check it out. It's awesome.
Sounds like the Ninja Turtles villains. the Blind Frog Ranch versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay. Anybody else watching anything good?
I started watching House again, but I think I talked about that a while ago.
Yeah.
It's still good. It's still good. I did. You know, I wouldn't say it's like the greatest, but I did watch the Marvels.
I'm sorry to have to talk about that so that we don't have to watch it.
Yeah.
Well, we're back with another podcast, so that's exciting. Oh man, if you caught that, yeah, I was the one that was tasked with watching the Marvels. I believe I did that to myself.
Yes, you volunteered.
Yeah, I believe I definitely volunteered. But hey, it's fantastical to be back with everyone here. Chris, how's your week been going?
It's good. I didn't watch the Marvels, so everything has been good thus far. I did. You know what? I did text you all yesterday. I did watch Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny again, and it was better than the first time I watched it. And I would say the first 15 minutes is really, really good. Even I think that's the best de-aging I've seen. It was still not like quite dialed in, but it's the best by far. Better than the Luke Skywalker one, which I was excited, but it was like, geez, I think they could have probably done that a bit better. That's such an epic scene. But that first 15 minutes might be one of the best intros. I don't know. You're the expert, Dr. Brantley, but it's the best intro, I think. Of
in
all
the theater, I had a smile on my face for like the first 20-25 minutes.
Yeah.
And then it slowly started to change. But we can talk about that later. But I love that opening.
They could have maybe just de-aged him the entire film and just kept it in that era. Yeah. But I watched that recently. It's actually better than, nice recovery from the Crystal Skull because
yes.
Yeah. But the Marvels, lots of controversy. The end of the MCU, they're calling it.
You mean the MCU, as Disney called it, and still does not admit to it, but they did call it the MCU a very long time ago.
What does everyone think? I mean, I'm not reading too many good things, not positive things. I mean, coming into it, it was already set up for failure, but do you all think that this is it? This is, we talked about it last week, wiping out Kang. We recorded the podcast, and the update was they were thinking about replacing Kang with Doom, but now we've learned the guy who is writing the Kang franchise, the writer has been let go. So that should tell you it's definitely not happening. And the
director of the movie has also been let
go. So
go.
it's over. So with that being said, like, are we really going to see Doom? And then all of a sudden we see Fantastic Four out of nowhere with like Javier Bardem as like, Galactus. Like, what is happening? Like, what is going on?
Pedro Pascal supposedly as Mr. Fantastic Reed Richards. So I don't know. To me, it probably should have been someone maybe like a George Clooney, somebody that, because you do need that little bit older with the gray, that kind of stuff. But, That's just my opinion.
Well, here's the thing that I was thinking about, is that when we're starting to call the movie over domestically and here made 110 million, and we're starting to say that something's a failure because it's like 200 million. It's going to make its box office.
What, the Marvels?
It's the Marvel is going to make.
No, it's not.
It's the Marvel's going to break even.
If it costs 300 million and they spent at least 100 to market it, they're not going to make 400 million.
Well, they're saying it would cost it 200 million. It's gonna be even lined. These people talking about what's a complete failure.
They only get 50% of the box office because the other 50% goes to the theater owners. So if they make 100, they're only getting 50 in return.
Sure, but you've got to think about all the regions in the world where it's playing. You also got to think about Disney Plus has ads now. They're going to make their money. It's not lost money. It's like the same thing with The Flash where they tell you, well, it lost money. It didn't lose money. They just basically write that bottom line the way it does. What's the scenarios when we're coming in and saying, all right, 110 million worldwide. Any other movie in the United States, we would be praising that as pretty good. Here it's like, because it's not going to make $1 billion. It was not going to make $1 billion. The last several films haven't made $1 billion. It's that time is probably over with when it comes to certain franchises. Not everything is going to get and I think they need to knock their expectations down from this is going to be like the Avengers a decade ago was going to make, or like even I think it was 6 or 7 years ago, the last Avenger movie. That time is over with. The pandemic came through. It's changed a lot of audiences. There's certain select movies that are going to make this. But for us to say it's a complete failure and everything like that, no, it's not a failure. It's a bad decision on the part of Marvel. But Marvel's going to make their money. It's just going to be a slow burn to the point where they're going to do it. But, look, I wasn't interested in watching the movie. I didn't, and several of the last couple of films, I really didn't want to watch Ant-Man and the Quantumania. Just from the advertisement, it didn't look that good. The last Marvel movie I thought was decent was Doctor Strange and the whatever that's the
Multiverse of Madness.
But at least that was kind of entertaining, though. I thought they had the perfect way to get out of this was through the multiverse. They could have brought back characters from different eras, dropped in a new Captain America. They could have done whatever they wanted to do, and they had that excuse of this is the multiverse. But I just think that people are like really like upset and up in arms. I think it's us versus thems. It's like true loyalists to the comic book community, to like casual MCU fans, where a lot of people just say, "Oh, you guys jumped on the movie bandwagon," and I've been reading comic books for 30 years, and it's like, I thought it was strange the way this whole thing has been perceived. It wasn't like it made $20 million on week one, and then who would have known Five Nights at whatever, was going to make that kind of money, which was something that catered towards a younger, skewed audience. There was a lot of teenagers, a lot of guys that are under the age of 20 that went to that movie. That seemed like the hip thing to do. The Marvels was not appealing to that exact same audience. It was built in. If you weren't a Marvel fan, I don't see you jumping in and watching that film outside. So,
well, I think even if you weren't a Marvel fan, you jumped in to watch the film, you jump out faster to get your money back before the movie was over. And I think I totally agree with what you're saying in terms of like it bombing things. So like right now, I just looked it up while you were talking. The North America numbers 47 million, and then international is like 63. So they are going to make money, but the worst opening Marvel's movie before that went to The Incredible Hulk, right, with Ed Norton. So that was like I think it was the one with Ed Norton.
Yeah, it was Ed Norton. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think what people are really comparing it to is not phase 1 or even phase 2 Marvel movies, but just in recent past Marvel movies, and it is tanking. And the problem with it is, I'm going to be honest with you, it's one of the worst written things I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like there was not one redemption factor in this movie. I didn't understand an island of dudes and it became a musical for 10 minutes. Like I have no idea what was happening in this movie. And frankly didn't care. And it was like there was a line in there. I can't even remember her name, but she was said just tap into girl power or black girl power, and I was like, what? That you're saying that to a superhero? Like, it's like the more and more I watch the Marvels, the more and more I realize that, well, the more and more I watch the Marvels movie, the more and more I realize why Disney's so pissed off at South Park for the Pandaverse, because it's literally what they're doing to it. And I where I think the problem exists is like, you'll have people that'll say like, oh, well, it's because it's like a female, and then now you got everyone jumping on this like chain of like, oh, it was like a black director, and then you have all this other stuff of like, well, these aren't like really well known heroes, and it's like, no, realistically, you could have written this to be amazing, you could have, but you also like. You changed out Ronan with a female character that couldn't scare a crow away from a field of corn, and I'm supposed to believe that she's Ronan. Like that doesn't make any sense when in like the last movie there was Ronan there. Like you're just changing shit to change shit at this point, and it's annoying. And that's where everyone I think has a problem. At least where I have the problem is like you're just changing it. You're just blatantly changing the shit because you can, and no one cares. And we just saw that we were talking about that earlier with the castings of like Reed Richards and shit. Like, no, like you don't do it. And I've talked about this before. Like Marvel has such an enormous catalog, right? Mm-hmm. And if they wanted to do something different and take a challenge, they could have spun off like Brother Voodoo, right? Like you could have spun that off because there was a point in time where Brother Voodoo was the most powerful freaking wizard in all of the Marvel universe when he got the Time Stone, and no one talks about that, right? So you have all these characters that they could tap into, but that the movie was like you can tell Brie Larson did not want to be in the movie. You could tell the other people were kind of like hating the fact that they had to say the things that were written for them because it was not good. It just wasn't good. Like it just wasn't good, and I had to not leave because I did that to myself.
And you had to stay for the end credits too.
I did stay for the end credits. But we gotta. It's just gotta stop, and I think that they have a lot of potential to come back because I think there's a lot of like unanswered. And I'm trying to remember the movie that did it really well, but there's a lot of really unanswered scenarios that they could tap into. We talked about like moving into like Doom and things like that. But there's even a lot of gaps that they could go back into, like even like phase 1 and create movies out of that. And I think, well, what I'm thinking of, if you think along the lines of this, right? Like one of my favorite Star Wars movies is Rogue One. And that's a story in between two of the Star Wars movies, mm-hmm. right? So it's just like we talked about. It's like, it's just lazy writers. That's all it is. It's literally fan girls and guys that got to come in and write a Marvel movie, and it's not good. And I don't know what it does. I don't know how it plays into the Marvel Cinematic Universe at all with any importance. Like you could just wipe this one off and it wouldn't matter, to be honest.
I give you that. I just, as Chet was talking, I just saw Dr. Brentley in my career is going to the toilet when we try to sit at a Marvel point. It's like, oh, you guys are screenwriters, huh? Oh, I heard what you guys had to say. Like, so. Well,
yeah, but you could also be like, look what we've written that's better than the Marvels. So, like, what? But I mean,
they've created a diversive factor here on, and it's self-done, and it's self-done in the industry as well. Is that, first of all, look, we don't care if this was the highest grossing movie of a black female director. What does it have to do with the thing? It should
Nothing.
be a good grossing movie for a director. Let's treat people equally.
Like
Let's not start giving out quotes and terms and situations. Let's just give people the achievements that they deserve, but let's not try to make it seem like, well, this is such a great thing, because I think in the long run that does divide the fans, and that push things about it. It's like, look, it was, even the director, when I was reading a couple of quotes that she seemed very mundane about the experience herself. I just think that this is what happens when they say, well, we'll change it in post. And it really wasn't developed in the beginning, and it was really, there's no need for the movie. No. That's the problem they've been having, is they're making movies and TV shows when there's not a need for the movies and TV shows.
And no one is asking for them.
Which I've heard Iger saying they're going to pull back on, and I think they do need to have the reins pulled in. But, I do think you're right about the Rogue One scenario, where there is a level where you can go back to show like Marvel, like the Defenders. Like the way they did with Netflix. Yeah. Well, you could throw them into time frames and situations that's in between the, phase 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever phases, and you can slowly develop that. You could do the Midnight Suns, where we never got to see all the supernatural characters, and now you can do that. I think the problem of it is that, like I said again, it's like we stated week after week, it's arrogance. Like, I did this, and now I can tell people what they watch next.
It goes back to what we've talked about before, where it's like, it's McDonald's money, and even worse, it's Disney money, which they're not having a lot of recently. And it's like they're not being cautious of it. If you think about the reality of where Iron Man 1 was when it was coming out, this was like all in, make it great. Do good writing. We're telling an origin story of something that half the people know, the other half don't, and the half that do know, half of them don't really know. So, like, how do we make this great? And that was their mindset all the way through, like, phase 1. And you can tell because it was great to watch it, right? And I think that there is this thing of, like, in my opinion, Netflix did Marvel better than Disney has been doing Marvel when they were doing all of the Netflix series of, like, The Punisher, Daredevil, The Defenders, all that stuff. Even Iron Fist. And I know that people had a lot of problems with Iron Fist, but the reality is that was actually Iron Fist. Get over it. It is.
I didn't. I never had a problem with Iron Fist. I thought it was a pretty good series.
Well, I thought it was great.
Well, that's the thing. Like, people say that Disney has killed the MCU. It's actually Disney Plus. Like,
it is Disney Plus.
Disney Plus. They rushed content to put on the streaming service to attract subscribers. They oversaturated the market. They diminished the quality. They reduced budgeting. We've talked about it in various casts. The CGI hit or miss. The storylines didn't make sense. And I think when the Marvel Cinematic Universe, cinematic is the key word there. So I think they should have done something very similar to what, and I know we're going to jump into comic books, but like, you got your premium brand MCU in the motion pictures. I know COVID kind of impacted that. And then you got like a second tier, brand, like like big publishers will have. We've talked about that as well, where you're like, hey, this is kind of like our sub brand. It's not going to be, don't get your expectations high. It's not going to be the Avengers. We're going to cover some of like the deep dive into the B and C and lesser known characters.
Yeah, that was called Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
But like, that was actually good. Like, but that's what they should have done, instead of like, we got to put, Captain America.
Yeah, it's
got to put She-Hulk. Like, they could have just set it up that way, and it was still done well because people just love Marvel. And now, in retrospect, it was the wrong path. But that's what I would have done, right? What did we just talk about? Was it last cast or the one before, like Vertigo? Like, you could have done that, like a line of them, like Marvel for TV, and people would have been okay with the budget not being as high because you set it up front, right?
No, you do a low budget version
Yes.
of individual characters and you make it about their story. You bring them into the bigger MCU so that you can all of a sudden have them cameo in a bigger movie or something, but you can start out really small and cheap if you just tell the story.
find out which character is melding with people
Right.
at the time.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
oh shit, we cast this wrong, it didn't work. Let's try this other one or something, but yeah,
they could have done that, and you didn't have. And their selection of characters too was a bit off as well. Like
Exactly, it was.
Is Miss Marvel the first thing you want to bring out right before, like, you do a Ghost Rider or some of these other characters that are much more, I want to say, popular, because who is this for, right? Where the market for comic books and comic book movies. Now, comic book movies is a lot broader audience.
Yes.
But comic books, that is a majority male dominated thing. It's not 50% on that. Now, the movies,
No.
I can see that. Yes, you have to make a audience pleasing thing for everybody. But, like, I don't know if we want to get into it now, but just the state of comic book industry itself.
Yeah.
It seems like they're not doing things for the audience that's there that wants to buy the product. They're trying to do other things, which is good. You should bring other people in. But also you want to play to the base that is buying your product. And if you throw them out, then you should be surprised that you're all of a sudden not making money.
Yeah. There's too many, again, like I think at the end of the day, you got people in charge that have either lost connection with their audience, or you've brought people externally that don't get it. It's one or the other. And the companies that have continued to succeed, including comic book publishers, they still have folks that are decision makers that haven't lost touch. But the majority in the industry, it just feels like, what are we doing? And I don't, it's scary because, as we've talked about, comic conventions and comic books used to be a main source for Hollywood to go pick different options and franchise opportunities and new content. That is few and far between. First, because like a lot of the stuff has already been tried, like some of the good stuff, most of it not well. There's a few exceptions, but I feel because Hollywood did not execute this well enough, they've been burned a lot, like over the past 10 years, all these flops. So I think it's a combination of Hollywood not wanting to source material that is lesser known out of the big Marvel DC universe and take a chance on independent comic books anymore, because it's like, well, we've been burned and we don't want to spend this budget. But also, like, are there fresh ideas happening in the comic world as well? I'm not as attached to comics as I once was, partly because I think there's a problem with just creative stuff. Not to say we have there's still some creative grinders out there making some really good stuff, but it's just definitely changed. I don't know what your all thoughts are, but it just feels different. And I think it has a lot to do with the decision makers. It really does.
Yeah. Well, again, like I said, as we move into the next topic from films and comics, is actually the thing is, you're right. It wasn't like a petri dish. You went in there and you basically looked and saw what worked. And then you thought that some of the ideas moved well to the screen. And I would say that the problem that's happening right now is that, the people in the industry, whether you're talking about in Hollywood now, but now we're talking about that are going back. See, they want to have that. We want universes. Before it was like a good character you bring to the screen, and now it's everything about a giant universe. We need a bunch of characters associated with something, and then let's try to create our own universe, because they saw that Marvel did it well, and then DC has done it. And so everyone's trying to do the pocket of that, and that's killing a lot of the smaller companies. But let's be honest, just like in films and the comic book industry, there are levels where there's good work that's being produced. And then there's a bunch of people that are basically writers and everything. I hate to label them, but I'm be a little honest. There's hobbyists that have came into the industry that take a product and everything, and they're just doing it on the weekends and whenever they can. And their heart and soul is not so much in it. They want to see their characters on there, but they're not putting the time and the effort that, let's say, somebody that's grinding that's kind of doing. So it's kind of like in the 1970s, where there was a huge independent comic book community. Some of those indie books were doing a lot better than some of the mainstream books because there was a well market for them. What's happening now is that because of the indie market and because of how the main companies are treating some of their books as well, now you just don't have quality over the entire industry. You have more or less quantity, kind of like a la Netflix. There's, you can turn on Netflix any day of the week, and this will probably kill us from ever getting a job at Netflix. Sorry, Dr. Brennan. But there's more of them. I remember there was a joke, I think it was on a Saturday Night Live, where they did the infinity loop of like Netflix shows, and what we do is like, just do the figure eight. And I think that that's the same way the industry is. I've noticed a lot of these Kickstarter ads, a lot of these, I'm trying to remember what was the other service. It's Kickstarter, and then there's some other one I can't even remember. Indiegogo, yeah, exactly.
Indie ripoff is what that one is. If it's not funded, you still lose your money.
well, the thing that kills me is that, again, these hobbyists, because some people are, and you don't need to be a professional writer to be in it. I think you put your passion, your time, and you're putting that effort in. But a lot of these guys are approaching this as like, let me throw my character in. I haven't did a whole bunch of thinking on the character, but I know it's good enough because I want to jump into this because I want my character to move on and get like a movie or a film. And instead of respecting the form that is at right now, the comic book form, and doing the best you can, they're looking to already, like, this is already going to be attached to Netflix or to Paramount or something else. And they're looking beyond the industry instead of like Mike Mignola, who just drew Hellboy. And then one day they said they're going to make a movie off of it. He wasn't in it like, I'm going to actually, do this for 20 years. He thought that first Hellboy series was like, he hadn't even thought of it. And the editor called him and told him, and like, hey man, it's like, what are you going to do for your next series? He decided this is the one and done. So,
well, and I think over the times too, like, in the comic book industry, from the amount that I've spent in it, and I don't know how much money I have invested in it, but like, I remember specifically, really realistically, and Mr. Storman and Brantley and Chris might know this better than I do. My first actual like San Diego Comic-Con was 2012. So, and at that time, I would say that it's kind of like, maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it had kind of started to like trail away from like what it actually was. But I remember a few key things where I started going like, I don't know what's happening to the comic book industry, but I'm bummed out, but also maybe I should be excited. Well, we'll figure out which side it's supposed to be on. And I remember when we were talking about how like the comic book stores are petri dishes and people would go in and just kind of see things. There was a series that was out in maybe 2016, 2017 called Lady Killer. Could have been a fantastic like HBO TV show. It's about a housewife, like, I'm talking like the perfect housewife, whatever, but she was like an assassin, and the way that they had her go through and like assassinate people was fantastic. Like, the writing was great, and there was talks on that, and then that dropped. And then the second one that happened where I was like, okay, people aren't willing to take chances, is one of my all-time favorite series is The Five Ghosts of Fabian Gray. And Dr. Brentley, you would actually like it because a lot of it is pulled from this idea of Indiana Jones, but he has 5 ghosts that he can tap into their power at any point in time because he has a stone that he grabbed that's part of it. It's like, it's one of the most wild series that I've ever read. It's a finalized series. He thought about bringing it back. He wasn't, but he actually got picked up and signed, and I think it was by HBO to become a series, and they took that and like shelved it and nothing happened with it, but it's still a great read. And I remember being like, I don't I don't know what's going on here, but like something needs to change. And then I can't remember when the purchase was, but my all-time favorite comic book app to find comics that I had not known about, that I could read, that I could get into, was Comixology. And when Amazon bought Comixology, I was like, this is the end.
It was
like this is the end. This is Amazon like reproducing the same thing they did with Twitch, which is they want it because they think it's money, then they realize it's not money, and then they just kind of like bury it, because like Comixology is very buried into Amazon now. Like it's not.
I don't know if
much.
you've got the emails, but Comixology is gone. They have transferred it over to Kindle now. So it's like, hey, if you want any of the stuff that you paid for on Comixology, now you got to go to Kindle. Set up an account.
Except for you can still do Comixology Unlimited and your 30-day trial, but they post more about one thing we wanted to talk about. They post more about manga than they do comics.
Well, let me. That's one thing I want to talk about on the manga front. I think this is part of, outside of having ideas that are maybe not as fresh or hot within the comic industry, is how are you losing fans? Let's talk about like why manga is more popular. So a comic book costs anywhere from $4 to $5 now. Okay. And for you to follow along a story is not going to be in one issue. You're not going to get so how many issues would you say a complete run would be from beginning to end on average? What is that? 8 to
4? I'd say 4 to 12 is what they're doing now a lot of times.
So 8, let's say,
just every episode, or 1 or 2.
So the average is 8. So 8 times 5, right? That's pretty damn expensive for someone to invest. So for one story. Manga is a volume that is filled with 5 issues, beginning to complete, and it costs anywhere from $8 to $10.
Yeah.
And guess what? A manga is more of a collectible. Like the way it's designed, smaller, more important. Like comics almost have not evolved, and I don't know why it's more expensive. So if you're
it's more expensive because they're allowed to be more.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But if you're someone that's trying to get into comics, the cost associated with it is crazy, especially if you want the physical copy. But second of all, like the story, you can pick it up and read it instead of like having to wait, and then some stuff gets delayed, and it's like when's issue 4 coming out, because depending on the studio. And I would say lastly, if you look at some of the manga, and the same thing with anime, which is obviously the animation side, is that it's not all superhero stuff. Like there's some like it's dark, it's funny. Japanese culture has really started to penetrate the American audience, and a lot of the fresh concepts and stories are coming from manga and anime, and it should be coming from comics. And part of it is, I think, cost. I'm not spending $30, $40, $50 to follow a story anymore. I'm sorry. Like I support the industry, but $4 or $5, you're joking. Like you're joking.
Well, it gets expensive, but that's where you have two different. Well, I guess you have 3, but realistically, there's like 2 different types of comic reader collectors that I've witnessed over time, and I've kind of like melded them kind of into my own thing. But you have the periodical ones that are like, yeah, here's my $3.95 every week, every whatever, and then you have the trade waiters, right? And so what I actually used to do when it was a thing, which wasn't that long ago, is I would get the previews and I would say like, cool, these comics are coming out, and I had I'm going to buy the number 1s to see if I'm into this story enough to like want to expand it. And I would always give every comic that I did, I would give them two print runs, and then I would decide which one of those, or both or all, that I would just wait for the trade. Because then when you get the trade, now you're at like $9, like $12, whatever, for a trade that you could just sit and read, and you don't have to worry about it. Because I think where the problem is like the days of like buying a comic and then 5 years from now that number 1 being worth anything is gone.
And
unless it's like unless it's like already CGC'd, you have it on your wall, you know what it is, it's a limited run. Like you're not going to buy a number one. I think there's 2 number ones that I've bought in recent histories that actually ended up being worth money. And one was Batman, the New 52, Scott Snyder's run of Batman. Like issue 1, I think is like $125. I paid like $3 for it or whatever.
Ooh.
And then the other one is Outcast. But that one I bought because my friend was the lead actor in the TV show, and I was like, cool, the TV show's happening. But even then, that was like the Robert Kirkman like train and his whole. So I think where the comic book industry is like you have all these people that are, the comic book industry is kind of tied to the like flip it phase too, right? You have all these people trying to buy up comics so that they can like sell them for profit, and no one gives a shit if your comic is older than like the 70s, because you're really not into it anymore. It's like someone saying like, oh, I have the Death of Superman, the gold package. It's like, congratulations. It's actually worth less than it is when you buy it.
Wait. So the Death of Superman in the black bag and the rebirth in the white is not worth anything?
No.
You mean I've been saving it for this long and it's not worth anything?
It's worth less than I have a Spider-Man old school comic I think I sent you guys. It's probably worth more than all.
But it's sealed.
Yeah, that doesn't matter, Chris. But I think the comic book industry, unfortunately, needs more attention because it is a fantastic medium.
It is.
And it just hasn't had. I thought honestly that Comixology was going to be it, man. Like that was a form of medium for comics that was fantastic, because you would sign into your Comixology account. Anyway, you went to Comic-Con, it was like get our first 10 issues on Comixology for free, sign up, use this code. And what was great about it is when you got to the end of the comic, they showed you other comics you would probably be interested in that were along the same line of the story, and 9 times out of 10 they were right. I was reading that comic, and it's just not there anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the part of that true as well. 2 things. One, I went into a comic book store today that I hadn't been into, and I didn't even know it existed. I was going to the doctor's, and I was out in like Hemet, and I just saw the sign that said comics, and it didn't even have a good call to action. And I stopped in.
It's wrong.
Yeah, it was. Well, it said comics on the window, but there was no storefront, no kind of like signage on streetwise that you could really see it. I just happened to just turn and see it, and I stopped, and like it's in Hemet, California, which is up where I stay at. Not too well, it's a little bit further away from me, but I happened to stop into the store. It was a great comic shop. It was well cleaned, neat. The books were organized. The strangest thing though was every book was bagged and boarded. I'd never seen that before. Mostly the new books are not bagged and boarded, but every book in the store was bagged and boarded. But
that's crazy.
The personnel was cool. It was clean. It was tight. It was well lit. It didn't seem like some of the other shops that I've been into. And I bought 3 issues. I bought the G.I. Joe number 301 because it was a continuation under Skybound that Larry Hama was continuing that he's been since the 80s and through several different companies. And I bought 3 books. I bought 2 copies of that black and white edition, standard edition, and then they had like a reprint that Larry Hama had done, kind of like to G.I. Joe number 1, but without all the editorial things they took out initially. So it was basically the Larry Hama version of what G.I. Joe number 1 would have been. And it was 3 books, and I walked out, and I got the receipt in my hand. It was like, that was $13.92. 3 books. Now, Dr. Brentley can tell you that normally when we were staying in the South Bay in one of my favorite stores, and I'm not going to name stores because if you do, that becomes controversial. But I remember I used to go in there and spend $60 a week and would come out damn near with a box full of with comics and everything.
Yep.
I walked out and spent like $14 and I had 3 books in my hand. and each one of them I think was $3.99, and then they charged you for bags and boards, which they
and just so we're clear too, these aren't trades. These are like
these are standard, regular, off the
standard
shelf
like
books,
periodical,
off the shelf books. And now this was the first time in a long time, because I thought most of the like the Real American Heroes back in the day from Marvel, they were better books. I thought the artists were better. I thought once they left Marvel and they went to some of I hated the Devil Do runs. I thought the artwork was terrible. I never liked I never thought the IDW books were worth anything, because IDW doesn't like to pay artists and pay for any kind of good work. But this was under Robert Kirkman and Skybound. Larry Hama's work looked great. The artist was great. And I was like, okay, you gave it a little hope. They spent, you could tell there was a little bit more time and money and energy spent on it, on the presentation. But I still thought at $13, that's like, like every couple of weeks or once a week. Like, is that a habit that I really want to get into? That's the problem. When comics, we used to go back in the day to stores, it was, again, you could walk out $30 and man, I never spent $30.
Dude, there was a point in time, I won't mention the story there, but I've talked about it off camera with you guys. But it was, I would go in Long Beach, and I was every week, my comic book fund for myself and my girlfriend at the time every week was $200, and I always walked out just under that. But it was all. I mean, I have all that shit in my closet. Like it was all good stuff, but it was like, it was good. It wasn't bad. And it was the comic book store, like the staff was kind of whatever, like they always got upset when I asked for a bag because I had just like stacks of comics. I was like, well, I don't want to slide in my car. But I'm curious in terms of like, because there's not a lot of comic book shops out where I'm at in Georgia. I think tomorrow I'm going to spend some time driving around and see if I can find some, just to kind of like see what the state of the comic book shops are in. But how do you guys feel about the state of the comic book shops? Like, is there a survival tactic for this? How does the comic book industry like boost sales? Like what do you guys think is going on?
Cards.
Well, I had went into cards. Like I said again, yeah, I had popped into this comic store just to point, because I knew this is a topic tonight. We were going to do a comics theme. So right when I saw it, I said, let me pop in there and see it. I talked to to one of the guys behind the counter. I said, how are you guys doing? Is the business doing well? There's good days and bad days. He said some days we're really busy and some days it's not, but we're doing okay and everything. We've been at this location for 4 years. So that was promising. And it was a nicer looking location. It wasn't the best part of town, but it was in a decent location. Now, we've noticed there's a couple of comic book stores out here in Southern California. Main one, again, we're not going to mention names, but it's getting ready to go out of business, that had been in business since my birth. and
it's massive. It was like
it was huge.
2 stories, right? It wasn't really 2 stories. They just had an upper level for storage or whatever.
Sometimes.
Golden Apple?
But that shit was packed.
No. It's not Golden Apple. But it's, again, we won't mention names of stores. It's going out of business. But the problem of it is that there's a lot of mismanagement with stores. There's a lot of, the one thing that, and the Dr. Brilliant, I've had this thing that was like, when you go to GameStop and you go to buy a game at GameStop, all the GameStops are all look uniformed. Mm-hmm. They have employees. There's a situation. They look great. When you go to buy comics, you're going to somebody's dungeon, somebody's bad garage, a retail store that looks fantastic. It varies so much across the board. You've got guys in there that are behind the counter, whether you run into a good employee or you got a guy who's bashing the product. I have never went into McDonald's and somebody told me, "Oh, this Big Mac sucks," and I went
while they're eating the Big Mac.
but when you go to a comic book store and it's like, well, hey man, what do you think about this new Ghost Rider? It stinks. The people haven't been trained person. I've never went to GameStop and say, hey, what's this? How good is this game? This is the worst game in the world. To be like, oh no, it's pretty good. Even if they know it's bad, they will tell you, because it's a corporate owned scenario. There's too many mom and pops in comic book stores, and you don't get the customer service and the presentation that you would if you had like a unified front of comic stores that came together and all, which I've heard like Marvel had a plan years ago to do like the Marvel store, where it was going to be like comic book stores across America, and they were all going to look the same. And I think that probably would save the industry. I think the problem is that it's two varying degrees of what you're getting. You're not getting the best presentation. There's some places where I know we can mention the store in the South Bay that Dr. Brentley and I went into. They had an old man that ran the store, and you would never drop your kids off at this place.
Yeah.
The problem is like the physical asset is not as popular anymore because you can get stuff digitally. So that's one. Two, you're relying on an older generation, as we've talked about. The younger generation hasn't taken a hook into comic books. And to draw people into your space, the days of like 30, 40 dudes in there talking comics and read are gone. And you bring the young kids in to play World of Warcraft and Pokemon and the new Disney game. And that's all fine, but now you have to pivot your card shop to like a more of a collect cards and collectibles. And by doing that, you're pissing off like the comic book readers because, someone that's in their 40s that's going to get comic books and they see, 25, 30 kids playing freaking Pokemon. That's probably not where you want to hang out, right? And I think it's a weird situation to be for someone who owns a comic book store, because in order to really thrive, unless your rent's so cheap and you're in a rural area where, you could a couple comics a week, you could pay, puts food on your table. And most of them have to pivot in that direction, right? Because you're definitely not selling action figures because you go on Amazon and get them cheaper, right? Like none of us talked about sourcing action figures from comic book shops. It's Target, it's Walmart, it's Goodwill, etc. So it's just like the intent of playing side by side. And Chet, you could talk more about this, but that's really where it's at, right? Because where else do you play these card games unless you meet up with friends and stuff? Like these shops are it. So you have a choice, and the world of comic book shops as we know it is not the same and will probably forever be changed. And that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I think
go ahead, Chet.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely a pivot point here, where you could make a comic book store that would thrive. And I was thinking about this for most of the day. I've actually had thought about this for a very long time. I for a quick stint, I lived in Seattle, and it was okay. It was great. Why I moved there is because if you know anything about board games, I mean, Wizards out there, right? And so if you make a board game, like ideally Wizards of the Coast would be good, but then you had all these like board game cafes popping up. And so like the card game industry is like really heavy in Seattle. But I had thought about this comic book thing for a long time, and then I remember back in like the like 90s where you had like blockbuster like music was like try it before you buy it. You'd sit down and you'd have like they'd have everything. You just tell them what you want to listen to. You could listen to it and you're like, oh, it's great. And you wanted the media. And at that time too, you kind of were like fighting, like there was talks about MP3s, but we didn't really know what that was. And like me. And so I was thinking about the comic book industry, and there's a and I'll give the very quick version of it. The way that you should run a comic book store that I think would pivot it into something that would be profitable and something that would draw people in, you would have to include technology. There would have to be comic book publishers that are behind it. So if they're doing something where like when you buy the issue, you get access to something that's like extra on the issue, whether it's like a narrated version or some version like that. But the comic book store is where I think you would have to make the biggest change. And realistically, what I think it would be is that you would have a digital, basically just an iPad that was in front. You didn't have any of the comics on the wall. None. There'd be no comics on the wall. But you would probably have like your collectible comics and all the ones that people really want to get that are like hundreds of dollars and they want to buy them because you found them. But the iPads are where you would have people sit down, and on every iPad or everything you had to go through and browse, you could read the first 5 pages of an issue that had just come out. So you're just really downloading the sample pages from all these things. You have the previews there, they can read it, but it causes conversation. You have somebody walking through, checking on people like, hey, what are you interested in reading? Like, I got these, right? Taking the idea of comiXology and really saying like, cool, let's get people in that know the product to build it out, because there's a couple of things happening that are happening in the comic book industry that we're not really talking about. And that is that like diamond distributors, not really like the what they were before, right? Like, I mean, we talked about what's changing. And so if you think about this like crazy pivot point of where we're at in the comic book industry, San Diego Comic-Con, Jim Lee was like, we finally got it back, like no more Hall H, right? And there was no Hall H. So now you have like the world's biggest comic convention. Realistically, like, are we going back to just comics? But if you had a store that introduced technology with knowledge, and it was like unilateral, it was the same thing across, for if I had one in Georgia and you guys had one in California, it looked the same, it felt the same, it acted the same, everything was the same. You offered drinks, you could sit down and read through like the first 5 pages of who cares how many, but you're just trying to get an idea of what you want, and you actually turn it back into the art form of the digital age. I think you'd really have something there. And I think you could have a reading room as well. So like if you wanted to have people to read, like you could have like a place they could go to read, because everyone thought that, oh, no one would go to some place and eat food and play board games. That's stupid. Fast forward, those are super popular and everyone does it and they like doing it. And so I think you have to create a community and a place of community for the comic books to get people to want to go back. And it can't look like comic book stores look like we talked about. It just can't. And you could or could not have the comic books on the wall, but the purpose of not having them on the wall is that you get people that only get to come in and you get to control that they only get to read the first 5 pages instead of sitting there reading the one that they want to buy that week and they don't buy it from you. So you're controlling your cost. Like it's just like you can't go into GameStop and play the new Super Mario Brothers and just hang out until you beat it, right? They're gonna be like, no, get out of here. So why not do that with comics in an age of digital where everyone can download everything from everywhere? You're always gonna have a niche of people that want an issue, but they don't want to waste the money. So if you give them a chance to figure it out, I don't know. I think there's a way to bring it back. I think there's a way to get people pumped and excited about it. You had Mark Wade talk about, do we have to have like the old school comic book writers come in and teach these new ones how to like write comics? Neil Adams, before he passed, talked a lot about it. I used to watch him on his like Instagram lives. He would talk about like people aren't drawing the same. They're not putting the love into it. He's like, that's why I can sell my Joker to print for like X amount of money and you wouldn't buy someone else's. And so there's a lot behind it. And I think you can bring it back.
Well, I think you're right about the shops. I think they do need to have a uniform front that would help it better. I think it's something that looked more appealing, more updated would definitely help. And I think you can't have too many. It's the independence that's done it. But also, look, a lot of this blame is on the 90s artists, the Jim Lees, the Todd McFarlanes, they milked the industry for all it's worth. And they took, they brought in all this wave of lateness, and the industry was forever changed by them. And they got all the benefits from it. But now the industry is now lagging off. And each one of these guys are still in the industry, but they're not helping the industry. Todd McFarlane just did a Spawn book that, damn near had 30 covers. Like, this is the gimmicks that you destroyed the industry in. I don't ever remember in the 1970s 30, number ones.
You couldn't do it.
One issue. That was it. They got to get out of this. I was just like I said, the G.I. Joe book I just bought. It had like 6 or 7 different covers. It doesn't need it. Stop milking the industry for what it is and start helping it.
Yeah. And
the same thing is get rid of some of these guys that are at the head and the top of the industry that's been in. Oh, I've been in the industry for 20 years. That's why the industry sucks.
Yeah.
Is that every other industry in the world has innovation. Somebody comes in and does innovation. It's just like right now from the car manufacturers. Now you're looking at the electric car manufacturers. You need that healthy infusion of youth in order to get newer and greater ideas. Marvel and DC are both owned by 2 major corporations that don't spend time. You buy something, and like Amazon did for comiXology, and you ruined it. because you didn't promote it. You didn't treat it like you would an Echo or like any other Amazon products. You know, they advertise the heck out of that Fire Stick. But in the same thing in comics, you barely hear Disney promote Marvel. You barely hear Warner Discovery promote. You got James Gunn is the head now, and I love comics. We haven't heard jack crap from him. This is what comes. You have to have different changing of the board, and if you want younger people in, because Mega don't advertise. I've never seen a Mega advertisement on the screen because you know why? They have the actual anime shows. They have the merchandise that draws people in.
The word of mouth.
That's the difference.
Yeah. Well,
that's the difference. They need to change the way they're thinking of how they're running business. It's business as usual since the 1960s in 2022.
Yep.
Yeah, Chet, now to your idea of a store like that, I think that's smart, and you could do something like an app on your phone where if you had the 5 pages, every book that's coming out this week, I think you would sell more books because you could look at everything you want on your own time, check it off on the list, and then go to your store and say, hey, here's my list. Oh, digital. Okay, let me pick them up. And then give you all your stuff. There's things you can do that is bringing comic books, which is this old-ass medium from 100 years ago, into the modern age.
Well, you know what the most digital thing I've seen in the stores? They can take your debit card.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing that could revolutionize the industry. Weed shop combined with comic books.
Oh,
talk about
wow, that sounds like a great idea.
Talk about the conversations. I mean, you could really, you
sponsored by Ditchy.
Yeah. Well, I think this is really good conversation, and I think we, at the end of the day, we all love comics. All of us have been involved in the industry in some form or fashion. We all grew up reading comics. And so I think the clearer thing is we want it to continue to succeed for a younger generation because there are people out there that are grinding, that are hustling, there's fresh ideas. But I think at the end of the day, the ones that have the highest visibility are the ones that are stale. And so we hope that changes paths like we often say about the MCU, about the DC universe. We want good movies. We want good content. We're just saying it because it is what it is, and we're not the only ones that are saying it.
Well, you know what, Chris? What we should do is we should challenge ourselves in the next several weeks. Chet was saying he was going to go and search for a comic book store. Let's just let's once every couple of weeks or something, walk into the store, have somebody give us a recommendation of the book, read the first issue, and if it's good or something, we'll bring it back to the podcast and hopefully introduce somebody else to it. Because I think that's the best way for us to help the industry, man.
Yep, that's a good idea. Well, good discussion. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time
boys and girls of all ages,
the best of series.
Oh, snap.
We do this every episode, the best of content. Last week was super exciting. We got to talk the best of Aliens. If you haven't already seen the episode, it is on the channel. But this evening's best of is the best toy lines of all time. Very exciting. We're into toys. We've talked about toys. So let's jump right into it.
Micro Machines.
I remember Micro Machines.
No.
That's right.
Army Ants? No.
Army Ants? Yeah, I remember Army.
You guys remember Army Ants?
I don't think there's anything that can compare with Legos.
Yeah, no,
especially dominant.
Ninja Turtles.
Yeah,
I was never into Legos that much.
Even the cool, epic Star, like the stuff that's new now, you could build a Millennium Falcon for $35,000.
The Indiana Jones Lego sets.
I'd rather have the Millennium Falcon. I'd rather have the action figures. See, Star Wars figures, that was my first huge toy thing, anything that I just loved and I got so much of.
The Kenner line. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's probably, to be honest with you, if there's a number one of all time, I think it probably is Star Wars. because that Kenner line dominated everything.
Yeah, they started.
Well, it changed the entire industry because they went from, probably selling less than, maybe a couple million a year to all of a sudden multi millions of dollars a year. They're selling this stupid plastic shit.
Yeah, and that's the reason why my all-time favorite toy, of course, obviously everybody knows, G.I. Joe. The reason why they shrunk from the they said doll, but technically action figure down to the 3 3/4 stage was due to the success of Star Wars and all those other things. So I have George Lucas to thank for my favorite all-time line as well. So
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the original figures, Playmates for sure, and then to go along with the old school, because I collected Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I was a big collector when I was young of the original Masters of the Universe toys as well. I had Castle Grayskull and He-Man and Battle Cat and Skeletor, and that was like probably where I was old enough to like. Well, no, I was still young, but I had a shitload of those things. Yeah, the Star Wars toys I was a little bit younger, but I remember when I got a little bit older, people still had them because like then Jedi came out. But it would have been cool to be like a teenager in that era. Like if I think about like how cool that would have been to like be able to, if I could afford buying some of those toys, like it was like the first thing, like, in your 20s going to the store and like buying all these I would have had every damn figure if I could afford it. But He-Man for sure stands out.
Yeah. Master Universe. I know, I remember the Spawn figures. Now that wasn't like, through my childhood. That was actually when I was probably like, between like my 20s. But they were the best looking figures. They had the best sculpts. In fact, that's the one thing you can thank Todd McFarlane on is the Todd toys, which turned into McFarlane toys, really changed the rest of the industry. I don't think we would be getting the Star Wars Black Series or anything with this high detailed and all the sculpts if it wasn't for those early Spawn figures, because Spawn was killing it when it came to the sculpts. Articulation's what he needed to work on, and he has, but the sculpts, they were like mini statues every time you purchased one. They were fantastic, man.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, anybody? That was super popular. I wasn't a big fan, but I think those things were flying off the shelves left and right along with the TV show.
Well, I was working at a Toys R Us in 1992, which was like the height of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And we had adults get into fist fights during the Christmas season over certain things that were on the shelves, and the Power Rangers were one of them. Because my kid's got to have that. You old man.
Yep, I think there was that. You also had at the time one that I always talk about that I want, like the whole collection, but I think the money thing is kind of there, which is the Mask toy line.
I was waiting for you to say that because I didn't want to say it until you said it.
The Mask toy line is probably one of my all-time favorites. It is owned by the overlords of Kenner.
Yeah.
And then I think we forget about Muscle. Chris had brought this up, I think, in like podcast number 1, the little Muscle toys, which is funny because those come from an old anime.
Well, just like that, the old, which Dr. Britton and I don't think you guys would be old enough for that, but the old Army figures, just green little ones. With
Army men, you could get them in a plastic of like 250 of them.
Yeah, and I had hours and hours of those, man, and they were even for as small as they were pretty well detailed. I give them credit, So
my monkey in the barrels always attacked my army men, and they like held them up. They held them up in the trees. But yeah, I think that was crazy. Obviously, we have G.I. Joe.
Yeah. Transformers.
Transformers. Transformers. I think was like. I think Transformers, in a way, at some point in time, was a little bit beyond its time because it was literally like you're like changing this toy from one toy to another, and you never got bored. And that kind of spawned off like a bunch of. I mean, you have Voltron too. Was like
exactly.
Voltron was crazy. Voltron had the tigers, and then a lot of people don't remember the cars, but Voltron had cars. So I mean, there's a lot. Street Sharks.
I remember Street Sharks. I thought it was always a weird kind of thing.
We said
Street Sharks are
best toy
badass.
lines. I don't know if you. Not sure.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Did
if
you get that
the
memo?
message. Yeah.
I mean, when Street Sharks came out, though, that's all anyone was buying.
That was huge.
Yeah.
It was like,
So I'm talking
Yeah,
like
that 6
yeah,
months.
that's-
That 6 months window is huge.
Yeah, it was huge. You're giving me shit about that, but like you just let muscle slide. Like,
Oh, freaking muscles
That shit
are
was
awesome. I
going
mean, they're
on.
still making them at
Yeah,
Burger
but-
King today. They're just in DC. There's DC muscle figures. Trust me, I like my daughter's playing with them today, so they will forever be. What about the Marvel Legends figures?
yeah, Marvel Legends is really nice. Yeah, I think that and Star Wars Black Series have redefined what action figures are today.
Now, you guys are just talking about action figures and stuff. Let's talk toys. Like when I was young, like real young, it was, hey, this is before all the Transformers and all that kind of shit came out. So it was like Lincoln Logs and Tinker Toys. I don't know if you had that. It's like creativity was the name of the game back then, before it was any IP that was already pre-molded to your specifications. You actually had to work out some shit and build some shit with your imagination.
Yeah, it's just hard to compare a metal
Transformer to a Lincoln
Well, that's
Log.
why I'm thinking like metal Optimus Prime to like Mr. Potato Head. You know, it's just very difficult for me to like Dr. Brantley's like silly putty versus a Build-A-Figure Galactus. It's just like
No, you know.
Silly
Okay,
Putty
you want
wins.
to. No. If you want to get crazy, then Dr. Brinley, you got to also talk about the Kenner spirograph.
Yep,
Like I know you had that.
I did.
Everybody had that thing, and that was Kenner Toys, because remember Kenner's Toys started back. It was a spirograph, Etch-a-Sketch, the blow up your house scientific set,
Magnadoodle, Light Bright.
Magnadoodle. Yeah.
I had a Light Bright.
And when your parents paid for Light Bright, they're like, "What the? I just paid for what?"
Well,
Like,
the shitty part about Light Bright, when you have, it was great for about that first week that you got it after Christmas. And then you realize, oh, there's no more black paper that my parents are getting. So no matter what you did, because you had to poke it through a piece of black paper and to light it up so that the whole thing wasn't just one bright light. And you use that paper up once and make a little pattern, and that's it. You're done. If you didn't get any more, well, hey, there's used to be a dinosaur there, but now I'm making a house. Didn't really work.
That was the Light Bright. Always was accompanied by like the troll dolls. And then you had Hot Wheel cars. Those have been around for.
Yeah.
I loved Hot Wheels and the tracks. Those stupid little orange tracks that you could put together with little tongues, and you could make all kinds of crazy shit.
I've seen the new ones now. Those things fly like 500 feet in the air. Like,
It's insane. It is insane. I know that everyone also had like the Fisher Price little people. You know, you had those.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I went to
like this big, made of wood.
I went to Target recently, and they have these little Hot Wheels. I was like looking for my daughter, and each Hot Wheel, it's kind of like Mario Kart. You know, they have their own little racers, but it's like Darth Vader driving, and like Chewbacca, and like Woody from Toy Story is like really cool. I'm like, Hot Wheel has all the IPs. You can get every damn kid. Like, it's kind of cool. Like, it's too late in the game, but I can see why people collect. There's crazy collectors. I'll go to some of these
Darth Vader.
They are.
I go to some of these like swap meets, and I mean, they got things, and people are buying left to right. You got this car. I'm like, I don't even know how you're tracking if you're just collecting cars. Like, how many cars and colors and variants? That's a hobby. That's
if you want Dom Toretto to race Woody, you got it. You got it. You got it with Hot Wheels.
It's also the one thing I will give Hot Wheels, because my nieces and nephews now that are very young still play with So I was doing it. My grandfathers was playing with Hot Wheels. These moved that line, but it is the most economical toy.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you walk in and you can get 5 for like $5-6.
No,
compared to any other thing else is like completely crazy. But that's the most affordable thing that you get. Each one of them has like 60 to 70 cars themselves.
Yeah. I was just a couple months ago, I sent you the picture, Mr. Storm, where in my local grocery store, there were about 5 or 6 different stands in different parts of the store that was just Hot Wheels toys. It was a full-on, probably like 5-foot stand, and a couple, 100 different Hot Wheel cars.
Yeah,
and
sounds like they were leading the way.
It was like I think it was like 2 for $4 or something like that. But it's like cheap as hell. Get your kid to shut up. Here, you can get this.
But that's a company that has not shied too far away from the original packaging either, which is like very on brand. That logo, the orange flame, it's usually a blue clear plastic,
and the little plastic
it's just
on
so
it.
Cool. Yeah, like it's been like that forever, and like they stayed true to that. I think the only one that rivals G.I. Joe, Barbie, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, I go down the aisle at Walmart and Target, it's a whole section of Barbie still.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's nuts. It's like
amazing,
crazy.
At Toys R Us, we had an entire pink aisle. On each end, it had a giant end cap thing that was just Barbie. That was the only toy. Not even Hot Wheels, not even anything else had their own aisle, but Barbie had its own dedicated aisle in just about every.
That's the Mattel moneymaker right there, right? Like that.
It is, and that and Hot Wheels.
I may not know this, but man, I swear, Barbie, if they started coming out with like the equivalent of an action figure for Barbie,
oh jeez.
Dude, that thing would blow up.
Desert Storm Barbie.
No, I'm dead serious. If the Barbie brand went to like a 6-inch action figure, and it was like Barbie and all the stuff, and it was a 6-inch action figure, like that would rival some toys. I'm telling you right now, like that would just like.
Well, because the dream house is so damn big. If you could actually make it at a better size, Barbie around in her little hot car.
Just think about the sheer amount of toys at the volume they could make for Barbie.
Yep.
Literally, they could take the entire freaking G.I. Joe line and translate that somehow into Barbie and just roll around in Scrooge McDuck's money bin, because like it's such an influential brand, and you would get just like My Little Pony did when they did a rebrand and they reimagined it. You got a bunch of bronies, which is all the dudes that like My Little Pony. There will be dudes that are like, these new Barbies are epic, but I don't know if they can do it.
Now,
and if they do, it's on this podcast.
All their G.I. Joes have girlfriends now, so
That's what I'm saying. We said it here, so you owe us, Mattel.
We're forgetting about a big one, Nerf.
Yeah, oh yeah. Those Nerf guns.
Nerf has full aisles. Nerf, I go down there, there's like 40 weapons.
I'm started with a football, and now it's turned into shotguns.
It's like everything. I'm like, these things look like they hurt. Like when I was a kid, it was like Super Soakers and Nerfs that maybe like you fired and they dropped. They dropped off within a foot. Now they got these things that look like American Gladiators. They're firing like 45 darts.
Yeah.
45
rounds a second.
Yeah.
Dude, there's this in where I'm at, my girlfriend's mom's neighborhood. They do annually a Nerf gun fight. and I was told by all of the family that I'm not allowed to go because I had ordered a shoulder resting
Predator.
Shoulder resting.
He shows up.
It was a shoulder. No, it was the strap. You had to have a strap on it because the chamber held 500 rounds, and it shot like 90 rounds a second. So
Did
in like 2 minutes
device too?
Yeah, no, it was great, and so I had to return it. And I was told I couldn't do it because I also went around to all the thrift stores and I bought all these Nerf guns that like they said they didn't work, and I just went on Amazon and bought all the replacement parts, and I had like 15 Nerf guns that all took batteries that were all automated, and they were like, these are like kids playing, and I was like, not my problem. Like, get your parents to buy you better guns.
Yeah.
Like,
I was thinking like what, stashing it through the neighborhood through certain parts.
Yeah. I
John Wick.
did. I was. Yeah, I had it all set up. I bought the strap, and I bought it all on Amazon, so I returned it. But I had the strap that held the clips, and all my clips were 18 bullets each, and those were all packed because I bought.
Why am I picturing like these like 12, 13-year-olds and Chet showing up like Blaine, Jesse Ventura's character from Predator, with like the cigar and the hat and the Gatling gun? I ain't got time to bleed. It just fired,
dude. I'm telling
you,
you,
freeze the Nerf darts too, so they hurt better, like more.
Yeah. I'm telling you, man.
You went like hardcore, man. Hardcore, brother.
Dude,
Nerf had like the black.
I would pay. I would pay the next
Nerf
time
missile launcher.
Yeah.
They make vests and everything. They have like a Nerf Ultra, which is motorized. That's a blaster. It has a big barrel on it and it spins around. And I think it's a 25 dart gun. I think it's 25, but it shoots. But you also have like the vest that you can stick all the bullets on. I'm not making this shit up. It's a tactical vest for Nerf. And then they have the one that I'm trying to remember the one that I actually had. It was the reason why I wasn't allowed to go and play was because the one that I had that shot all of those is the ones that they're like, it's the little yellow balls. And I was told, oh no, they're using the darts. And I was like, that's not my problem. You said Nerf and it says Nerf on the side and I am ready to go. But I had, and then I also had the Nerf Mega Guns, which if you've ever seen those, they're the ones that shoot like the big darts. So I had a sniper one of those. It was literally like, I think what? Yeah,
just the one walking down the street. Oh,
yeah.
I see you in like a whole tactical outfit.
No, it was like 4 feet. It was like 4 feet long.
It comes in like a case.
You have to put it together like an assassin.
It has a scope that slides on it. It's got the rails.
I'm surprised some kid in the neighborhood didn't hire him. Like, hey, man, I've got a problem. Can you take out these guys for me?
And it's the Nerf Mega, so it has this like little clip of all the Mega darts, and you literally lay down and like you pull it back, and it goes.
They told Chet don't show up to the party when he came with the Gatling gun with the actual cage of ammo. It's like too much, man. It's just for kids.
I got the Gladiator tennis ball launcher and just put a sticker on it that said Nerf.
We're laughing about this, but I'm sure if I could check like late night on ESPN, there's probably a competition. Nerf.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely, there is.
Well, since we got Nerf and everything, my favorite toy when I was a kid, which is really going to show our age right now, was the Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man.
Mm-hmm.
I had it. Really, it wasn't the remake one. It was the 1970 something version of it, where you basically had this. Actually, the worst part about it, he actually had like metal in his arm too, which now I come to think about it, there might be the reason why I don't make them anymore. But that was one of my first. There wasn't technically it was a doll, man. Let's not call him action figure. It was a doll. You put clothes on him. But Steve Austin, the $6 Million Man. That was my first one, brother.
The original WWF figures as well from the mid '80s.
LJN.
I think LJN was. Yep. LJN.
Did you also have the thumb wrestlers too?
No, but and then
I thought that was always the dumbest design
I've ever seen. We forgot Thundercats too, and Chet, you just did an unbox.
Thundercats. So no, that's good. I had to figure this out. I had to tell you guys. I'm going back to Nerf real quick. The gun that I bought was called. I have it in front of me right now. It's the Nerf rival Prometheus MX 20K. It's $189. It's 5% off right now. The capacity
It's 5% off.
held 200 of the rival bullets, and it shot at high velocity at 100 feet per second.
Yeah,
and you held it like a minigun. So that's why I wasn't allowed to
So
play.
your new name is John Woof. You know the sound.
Anyway, sorry, but yes, Thundercats is great. But Nerf made a Thundercats sword. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. Mm-hmm. They did.
Yeah, Nerf made a Thundercats sword, and I like beat my friend up with it. It was great.
Nerf made anything that's like,
they
if
did.
this is lethal,
they still do.
We just make it softer than lethal.
Yeah.
Yeah, they still do.
Although I'm waiting for like now on the 10 o'clock news, I'll turn on and find somebody robbed a liquor store with a Nerf gun.
Yeah,
if it shoots 100 feet a second, you know, that might be doing
like
damage.
They couldn't book them actually have a weapon. It was non-lethal. What are you talking about?
Yeah. So it's a battery operated Nerf gun. Yeah.
Well, since the Chet's dominate, we should have done the best Nerf rifles of all time.
That's
so
right.
we're definitely going to have to run that in and everything, but as usual, you know, there's always some kind of a Chet story that takes it to the next level. I did think it was going to be Nerf tonight, though.
Now, I didn't have Nerf, but and this is probably not very well known today, but the BB gun for children. I had a rifle and I had a handgun that had the gas canister in it.
Yeah, people like you is the reason why they're not around anymore.
That's no, look, I never shot it at anybody.
Airsofts.
I had targets. I practiced in the backyard, and I was a good shot.
Yeah, that Scout's honor thing right there.
I never shot another living person on purpose.
Now, yeah, now they're just called airsoft guns.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Brantley's like, yes, let me remove my background. It's like he's got a John Wick setup of airsoft.
Any other? I think
I'm sure we're gonna miss a bunch.
No, look, there's the old school stuff. Like again, when I was a kid, I'm going back to when I was a kid. I'm thinking like
you had the wood stacking grounds.
Yes, you know, we had the hoop, and you know, you run it around the ground, try and throw the stick through it. But there was like frisbee. You know, frisbee is still to this day. You can, you know, they have stupid frisbee golf, which that wasn't a thing when I was young, but they turned it into a thing because people my age decided we have to make this into something respectable.
And I think isn't that like an Olympic event? Some dipshit tried to make it an Olympic event.
I love frisbee golf, and yes, they did try to make it Olympic.
I see Nerf in our Olympic future. Team USA.
I do see it now. I do see it now. Thanks to Chet. Yeah,
yeah, I'm gonna captain that bitch.
Well,
and yo-yos.
Yeah,
I had a bunch of yo-yos, electric ones that light up when you put them. Do all sorts of shit. I was not very good with the tricks.
But I think what would be cool, I'm going to give this as a freebie. The next John Wick, have him be trapped in a toy store and use various objects to kill yo-yos, frisbees, Nerf guns, action figures. That's a free one for you all. But if you if you see him in a Toys R Us type of place killing people with toys, you know where the idea came from.
You know what's funny? Keanu Reeves is such a rad dude that if you pitch that to him, he would probably do it for fun.
Yeah.
He would literally probably be like, "Yeah, let's
hula hoops.
Let's go."
He could kill anything, but
yeah,
like,
you want me to be John Wick in a toy store? Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Let's do it. I'd be like, "What? Okay."
And real quick, there's a couple things because I see you're trying to wrap it up. So
no, we got time. I mean, we could go. We got
nothing but time. Sure.
Yeah.
Now, Shrinky Dinks. I don't know if that was around when you were a kid, but
I love Shrinky Dinks.
This is possibly one of the most hazardous things that you can give to a child. Ever. It's like color it in, cut it out, and then put it in your oven. Well, it's like all these steps are dangerous.
Yeah, I think there's another term for it called explosives.
yeah. Shrinky Dinks and finger burns.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
You could the toys that were out.
Oh yeah.
Like those are
I
like
literally remember the Tonka toys that actually used industrial paint. Like
oh
literally
yeah,
had industrial paint on it.
leaded paint. Yeah,
It's like
I remember,
funny story about Tonka trucks. When I was, oh man, hold on. Yeah, okay. So when I was 6, I said some stupid stuff to my mom, and my dad found out about it, and my dad came and he was like, "What'd you say to your mom?" And I was like, "Oh, whatever." And he's like, "Cool." This was like a metal Tonka truck. He took it out back, he put it on the tree stump, and he chopped it in half with an axe. And that was when I was 6. And my dad replaced that Tonka truck 2 years ago at Christmas.
That's awesome. That's
Well, I
cool.
can tell
So
you-
he built you an original Transformer.
Yeah. I had 2 parts.
Well, I remember the worst punishment I'd ever gotten. My grandfather had, like, back in the days, they had, like, if you came up where we came up, everybody had a Cadillac. And I remember I left like a Tonka dump truck in the middle of the driveway, and he didn't see it, and it like dented his like Cadillac.
Oh.
He was pissed, but the Tonka was fine.
Dude, those things were not kid friendly.
No, those were industrial. They were literally industrial units with that yellow industrial paint on it, man. And like now,
like all
when I
this stuff-
see them, they're plastic, and you're like, somehow the spirit's not there. But obviously, kids are not dying from it.
Well, yeah.
That was the era where all the stuffed animals were stuffed with asbestos.
Well, we can't forget about Play-Doh.
No.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Play-Doh.
Silly putty.
Yep. Slinky.
Mm-hmm.
Rubik's,
that silly
Rubik's
putty-
Cube.
Rubik's Cube. Mm-hmm.
But wait, hold on. We're going crazy because were these toy lines?
yeah.
Well, Play-Doh
Yeah.
is. Rubik's Cube
Play-Doh
is
is.
like...
Play-Dohs.
I
They
mean,
alternated,
there was
but
my sister had the barbershop, so make their
Yeah, I
stupid
remember
hair
that.
grow with
Mhm.
Play-Doh and cut it.
Yeah, and then that one, if you let that Play-Doh out of the canister for like more than an hour,
It was a rock.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, Summer
That's
Grapes.
crazy.
Yeah, we'll be all night on this one. I knew this was going to be a long one.
Now, I did talk about the slot cars the last couple times with the Dukes of Hazzard, but I also had a Tyco glow-in-the-dark Jeep set with the S-Snake track that you could bend
Nice.
into different things, but you glow in the dark so you could turn off the lights and still see the car going in the track.
That's awesome.
I'm shocked today that those did not make a resurgence back. Because I remember they were huge when we were kids in the 80s, like all the tracks and all the situations, and has not came back well.
They tried. I got into like real slot car racing with my dad, like the big tracks that you go to, and I just don't think kids are into like setting that shit up and like putting it on their table anymore. It's like like that's stupid. I can go
those
play.
all took up a bunch of places too, man.
I would also say one of honorable mentions that maybe not falls completely into toys, but all the Milton Bradley board games.
Yep. And Parker Brothers.
Brothers. I mean, like epic. So they're toys, but also considered games, but just an honorable mention for all of those.
I mean,
games.
Mousetrap was more of a toy than a game.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Because by the time you set that up, you're like, wait, I don't want to play this.
I just want to set it off.
It was a great toy, shitty movie.
The game that I've always
dude.
that I always wanted, but it was like super expensive to buy, and now to try to find an original version on eBay is like $500. Is that I think it's called like Fireball Mountain or something.
Oh, I remember that.
Remember that?
I remember that.
Right,
Yeah,
you have the characters and the ball drops from the volcano. It can take different routes and knock your character out. Go on eBay and try to find an original with all the parts in the box. It's crazy. But that was one I always wanted.
Milton Bradley was, man.
Yeah,
because like the Hungry Hippos, I didn't even know the meaning behind that shit until I became an adult. Where they were like, "Oh no, hippos kill more adults more people than any animal in the world." And I was like, "Wait a minute!" I was like, "So the guys in the boat?" I was like, "Oh my god, I can't believe that."
Yeah,
but yeah, no, Milton Bradley did some, which I think now that's all absorbed under again, the mega lords of Hasbro.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, like you said, Mr. Storm, we could go on all night. If you're all listening or watching, drop us a comment. I'm sure we forgot a bunch of cool lines, but I think we captured a good amount. Any other ones that we forgot our last round? Anything that feels that, damn, we should have mentioned?
You know what? If I do, I'm going to post it in the comments.
Radio controlled cars. I
yep.
had radio controlled cars, a couple different ones. I don't remember exactly, but like hot red, probably Ferrari kind of thing. It was pretty cool.
Yep. I'm going to say, just because my daughter has them now, Cabbage Patch Kids. You talk about a phenomenon. And Beanie Babies. Those two things people wanted to kill each other over, and now they're just
worthless.
Whatever. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Garbage Pail Kids.
Pretty good movie based off of that too, man. The Beanie Babies one. That's pretty good film on that.
Yeah.
And no one has said Funko, which all makes sense based on the state Funko's in right now.
So give it 20 years.
And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, our special sponsor, who does carry a lot of toys, probably Funkos. It's okay. People
and everything else we talked about.
And everything else we talked about is Toys versus Games in Wilmington, California. Mr. Storm.
The great Toys versus Games, our sponsor. Every week we're thankful for them to actually sponsor the Shadowe Crew podcast. Like Mr. Calkins said, it is in Wilmington, California, and chances are, yes, all the silly stuff that we've talked about, or you get a chance and everything. Maybe some of those old Milton Bradley things might pop up in that store, but they're a one-stop mom and pop kind of store. They don't take on the look of a comic book store. They actually look like a retailer. So when you go in there, it's a great place. I've seen that they have meetups where they have a bunch of trading of video games and everything. Every now and then they have a huge event, or they go around to other different shops and have many events. So they're really into the community. It's a good place to walk in the store. You can get somebody that's knowledgeable on something, somebody who's willing to take the time to speak to you about the situations that you're into, whatever you're looking for, and chances are may be able to get you. So if you got a chance, stop in, tell them the Shadowe Crew sent you. Chances are Shadow will probably just take that to get more credit in the store. He'll probably say that Shadow sent them, not the Shadowe Crew, but either or, Shadow or the Shadowe Crew sent you. And check out Toys vs. Games. Thanks for them being a sponsor.
Awesome. Always appreciative. And channel updates. So again, the retrospect, the new one out now on the channel. Dr. Brantley, what's the latest retrospect for people to view?
Dracula is the last of the monster movies, and we're working on, don't know if we're gonna just go straight into Christmas movies next, or if there's gonna be something in between, but we're getting close to December, so I'm thinking it's gonna be Christmas.
Well, I think we were saying something that was like a Thanksgiving one, but we're going to do one thing I know about a schedule, because obviously since the writers went back to work, technically Dr. Brentley and myself, we've gone back to work. So, but we're probably not going to do it as a weekly series. It'll probably be like bi-weekly. So expect, or
whenever we can do it.
Exactly. If you get a third episode in between the month and everything, but it probably won't be week to week. And if you looked at the actual retrospective, the 4 episodes we did, they were not week to week. But we have a fun time doing it, man. Well, Chet, what you got for us on the unbox? What's coming up?
Oh man. I got you know what? I'm gonna unbox my Goodwill box.
Yeah, I was looking forward to this one.
I got that, and then I think I did say I was gonna do. It's gonna be. I guess it's a question of if it's gonna be the Ronin, or if it's gonna be Batman animated series. But I'll probably honestly do the Batman animated series figures, because I just need to open those. I want to touch them. They're not figures that I was ever gonna keep in the box, so I don't care. So I'm gonna call it out. It'll probably be the animated figures.
Awesome.
All right.
Which is fantastic.
And we are excited to announce also, we've been talking about it for a while, but Chet and I will by the end of this month, release the Retro Review Club episode. So more to come on that, but new content as always, including Shadow Knows and the various visits to different stores to find the best deals, and more things happening on the channel. So like, comment, and subscribe. As always, we appreciate your viewership. Thanks for listening. We again appreciate the support. Any last final words from any of you gentlemen?
Yeah, let's look forward to next week and some of these. As we said, Dr. Brent and I are getting back to work. A lot of writers are getting back to work as well. So look sometime in March or February for new shows on TV.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day, y'all. Thanks for tuning in.
Adios.